Last week I posted a video where I unboxed a bunch of Cooler Master stuff and everyone was like, what's that mysterious product that you had to redact and remove from that video? Now, bit of explanation, that was my fault. Cooler Master sent me all this stuff and the various things had various different embargo dates. The embargo for most of the stuff was last week, so that's why I posted that video then, but the embargo for this that we're talking about today, which is Cooler Master's new flagship MK850 keyboard, is today, or about today, whenever this video goes up. So since this is the new flagship, I thought I'd do it a solid and do a bit more in-depth coverage just on this keyboard by itself, and also to give you guys some sort of explanation as to what that blurred out product was. It was this, the MK850 featuring aimpad technology with analog keys.
Excellent!
G.Skill's new Trident Z Royal Series DDR4 RGB memory kits are made for high-class PCs, with each meticulously crafted module featuring a full-length crystalline light bar atop a polished heat spreader with a luxuriant reflective gold or silver finish, reminding you to appreciate the finer things in life, like the freedom to choose from Trident Z Royal RGB kits in 16 gig to 128 gig capacities and up to DDR4 4600 MHz memory speeds. If you're looking to give your high-class system build the royal treatment, click the sponsor link in the description below. So I actually already unboxed this when I unboxed all the other Cooler Master stuff last week, so I'm going to possibly mix in some of that footage along with this so you can see the pristine unboxing experience. I reboxed it so I can unbox it again. So it goes. Inside the box though, we have a bit of a instruction guide for how to use this keyboard. If you've never used a keyboard before, we have the keyboard itself, which has some plastic protective covering on it. This does have a new design, all new unique design compared to the MK750 if you're looking at the previous flagship keyboard from Cooler Master, although it does have a completely metal top with brushed aluminum and then some sort of texture along the edge, which I think is a nice look. Beneath that, we have a plastic for the base. You've got a routing channel in the bottom, so you can take your USB Type-C cable, plug it in right there, and you can route it straight back or off to the side, left or right, depending on your preference. You do have some feet back here, so you can lift up the keyboard and give yourself some decline as you're typing, which is more comfortable for lots of people. It includes a magnetic wrist rest as well, and then a feature that stood out to me immediately, which isn't going to be included on all the keyboards, Cooler Master did this for me because I'm special, is we have a Paul's Hardware keycap with my Paul's Hardware thumb screw logo on it, which I think is very special. Normally, you would get a Cooler Master logo keycap right there, which they have still included in the box for me, but wanted to point that out and say thanks Cooler Master for customizing my little sample here. Here's the standard Cooler Master keycap. Then beyond that, we have a complete new set of keys, well not complete new set of keys, but new keys for the QWER and ASDF keys here, which are the analog enabled aimpad technology keys. All the rest of the keys use Cherry MX switches. There's a keycap puller in there as well, and then we also have some purple keycaps that you can put on your left, right, up and down keys here, as well as the 5 macro keys, which are over here on the left side. Other notable stats about this keyboard is the use of Cherry MX switches, of course, key switches. They're Cherry MX Reds for this one. The manual seems to indicate that there might be other Cherry MX switches available, but I think at launch they're just going with red. Construction materials are plastic, aluminum, and PU leather, which is a faux leather that's used in the wrist rest. The color is gunmetal black. These are RGB keycaps, so 16.7 million colors. The keyboard has a pulling rate of 1000 Hz and a response rate of 1 millisecond, or 1000 Hz. There's an onboard 32-bit ARM Cortex M3 processor, as well as 512 kilobytes of built-in memory so that you can take your multimedia keys or your color keys or whatever, program the board with your settings, and then take it with you and not necessarily need to have the software installed. I am going to be testing out the software, which is currently being called Portal. Version 1.5.4 is what's available, and that'll hopefully give you guys a better idea of how to control this keyboard and some of the other various functions it has. For example, at the top, we have a set of media control keys here for play, pause, forward, back, mute, and controlling brightness. We also have 2 volume rollers right up here at the top. One I've already confirmed works just for volume by default. The other you can program to do whatever you want it to do. For instance, you can use it to cycle through RGB controls. You can use it to control the volume on just your headset versus one controlling the system sound, for example. Or you can just set it up to replace your mouse's scroll wheel function. And I imagine there's other stuff you can do with it as well. There's only a single USB Type-C plug to plug this in, but there is a built-in USB 3.0 hub, so you get 2 USB 3.0 pass-through ports right there. I can't vouch for the speed that you get through those since it is working through a hub, but nice that they are 3.0. Finally, you have 3 keys up here on the top right, and that is for the aimpad technology. You can turn the aimpad on or off, or you can adjust the level where it actually starts to detect you pressing down the aimpad keys. So if you want to adjust that so that it detects your typing a bit on the same level with the Cherry MX switches, you can do that and with dedicated buttons right there. So So here's the Cooler Master Portal software. Looks like a pretty easy to understand layout. It starts with aimpad on the left, and here's where you can actually control your aimpad functions. There are 3 aimpad profiles, M2, M3, and M4, so you can switch between them, and then that will change the function of your aimpad keys. So for example, in the default profile, we have the A, S, D, and W keys that are matching up with the left analog stick on a joypad, so they're going to imitate the left analog joypad stick's functions. If we go down to M4, they have also assigned the Q and E keys here to the left trigger and right trigger on there. And then you can see there's available keys that you can also program in if you wanted to set up something for the R and F, for example, to be like one of the other analog keys on the joypad. Here you can also adjust the sensitivity of those aimpad analog switches, and that pretty much is all for that. Moving on to lighting, we can actually see a bunch of different lighting presets, and the preset that it has right now is snowing, which I kind of like actually. They have a bunch that are pretty easy to use here. Rain, for example, shows some nice rain falling down there. I jump back to profile M1 here so that the aimpad keys are no longer lit up. So here in lighting we can see rainfall, so there's rain. We also have, of course, your default rainbow wave that lots of people have used before. Crosshair allows you to type, and that will sort of do crosshair vertically and horizontally with whatever key that you type on the keyboard. Reactive fade fades out each key as you type it, so it's got a blue background, and then when I type, it's the foreground in white, as you can see listed in foreground there. Then it fades off as you type. Of course, you have a custom mode here where you can individually select any keys that you want and change their color. We have a star field, which is just, you know, nice shiny starry field. Color cycle will cycle between colors. Breathing will do breathing. Also can do multiple colors or custom colors if you want. Ripple will do a ripple from wherever you type out to the edge. And again, you can speed that up and slow it down if you want to. So if I want to go slow, we have a slower ripple. With this one, you can actually play Snake on the keyboard. Cooler Master actually has a bunch of these built into their keyboard, so move your snake up or down, eat the green apple, and then your snake will become longer, and then you can eat the other apple. It's kind of interesting, and if you're really bored and all you have is a keyboard, it's a functional little game to play. Oh, I ate the apple again. I thought Fireball is kind of fun. Wherever you type, it shoots a fireball across the keyboard. So if you type on the left side of the keyboard, it shoots it off that way. If you type on the right side, it shoots a fireball off that way. It's a good question. Joe's wondering if the fireballs will explode in the middle. No, they cross over each other. They're not affected. You can do dual fireballs though. Water ripple will ripple out from wherever you punch a key, so that'll make it very dancey. Reactive punch just does a big block of keys that light up wherever you type. I already showed snowing at the beginning, which is similar to rain, but it kind of flutters the snowflakes down over the keyboard. There's a heartbeat function, which... Heartbeat? Oh. Oh, I see. It does like an EKG kind of. Peaks and drops back down. Circle spectrum is another RGB vomit option, which is just going to do a sort of a gradient this way. Reactive tornado sounds exciting. I don't know what it's doing. It's a tornado of RGB that's reacting as I type. And then down here we have multi-layer and multi-zone options, so you can actually pile up multiple effects on top of each other. That's going to get pretty crazy pretty quickly, so I'll just show that that's available. And then of course you can turn off the LEDs. That's convenient. Other functions in the software are key mapping, of course, so you can, tell any key to be a different key or disable that key if you want to. That is how you will actually adjust your scroll wheels that are up there at the top, because you do have a default function with the scroll wheel, which is volume. So the one on the right here is just going to do volume by default. So if you wanted to reassign the left scroll wheel here to do something else, you could do it here. It looks like currently you have access to macros, letters and numbers, navigation keys, modifier or spacing keys such as enter, backspace, space, left control, right control, numpad keys, media keys, punctuation keys, and miscellaneous keys. And of course, you could reassign any of these keys to do anything if you wanted to really confuse somebody who's trying to use your keyboard and wants to type something. Next up is the macro function. You can create a macro over here. I just created a macro to automatically input the Konami code. As you can see, it records delays and how long you've pressed each button. And you can have quite a bit of functions with each macro, of course. Loop functions are available too, and then you can quickly assign the macros to different keys over here by pressing the different key to assign the macro to that, which I'm not going to do right now. Lastly, we have profiles, big buttons here to reset, rename, import, export, or open each one individually. So this will change the entire keyboard's profile layout. You can support up to 4 of them. That will allow you to also change all of your macro settings and your aimpad functions and your aimpad profiles over there on the left-hand side as well. So fast forwarding a bit, I decided to spend a couple days with this keyboard, just testing it out and sort of taking it through the motions, seeing how it works. First off, as a keyboard, it is a perfectly functional and good keyboard. It uses genuine Cherry MX keys, so if you like Cherry MX Reds and you like a full-size layout keyboard with a number pad down here, you're not going to have too much to complain about. We have easily accessible media keys across the top here. We have the full layout, which is easy for typing. The wrist rest does come off a little bit easily if you're moving around your keyboard a lot, but for the most part it stays stuck on there and it's comfy as well. Then we've got some nice macro keys across the side, and the software's been pretty functional for me as well. It's done everything I've asked it to do. The only thing I haven't spent too much time on is the macro keys, but I've been testing out Superhot because if you're going to spend $200 on this keyboard, and that is the MSRP $199.99 from Cooler Master, you might be considering to yourself, what more is this offering me? And of course, the analog keys are going to be the big difference maker compared to other keyboards in the same realm. Now, I should point out that Cooler Master isn't the first company to integrate analog keys into a full keyboard like this. Wooting has the Wooting 1 and Wooting 2 that have similar technology, but the difference here is that these analog keys have 4 millimeters of travel, and it senses the analog depression, or how far you've pressed the key down across that entire range, whereas the Wooting keyboards only do 2 millimeters, so that's going to be a matter of preference for you. As for actually using the keys and playing a game with them, I have 2 demos that I'm going to run through. One is Superhot that I've been playing a little bit of right now, and I actually haven't played this game too much, but it is a great example for this particular keyboard because in Superhot, as you play, the time only moves forward as you move. So if you want to move time just a little bit and give yourself a strategic advantage, you can push the key down just a little and move just a little, and it will only advance time just a little, and that is pretty useful. So I'm going to go up here and punch that guy and punch him again. And then punch him again. And oh no, there's a guy behind me with bats. And now I've been beaten down. Alright. So I haven't tried this level before, so that's part of the reason. Maybe I should go for the guy with the bat first. Haha, I did it. So the whole point there is that it's very helpful to be able to make small movements in the game for strategy purposes, and so you can beat people up and shoot them. But the controls in this game are also very simple. You're on foot, you're just using WASD to move, and you have a couple other function keys. I also tried the keyboard with Grand Theft Auto, and that was a slightly different experience. So in the top right here, you have the aimpad button that will enable or disable aimpad mode for your analog controllable buttons over here. And you might notice when I push that button that the screen actually goes off and it says there's no keyboard connected. And that's actually disconnecting and reconnecting the keyboard every time I do that. More on that in just a second. But with aimpad on mode, it lights up the keys that have analog control there. And then over here in aimpad, I can actually go between different profiles. M2 and M3 and M4 are by default the aimpad profiles, and it has different keys assigned to each one. And when you turn aimpad mode on, what it's actually doing as far as Windows is concerned is emulating a controller that's plugged in. So it's saying your left analog stick, up, down, left, and right, is assigned to the W, A, S, and D keys right there for up, down, left, and right. If I switch to M2 mode, it switches so that right trigger and left trigger, the analog triggers at the top of an Xbox 360 remote, are now assigned to forward and back, and that's going to be key for a game like Grand Theft Auto. The third preset here does W, A, S, and D for the up, down, left, right on the analog stick here, as well as left trigger and right trigger for the Q and the E buttons, so you can actually have access to all of those functions at the same time. But in order to get this to work properly and play nice with Windows and easily be accessed by the games that you're playing, it again is emulating and pretending that it is a controller. So when you plug in this keyboard, it thinks it is controller 1 of an Xbox controller that you've plugged into your computer. For example, I just plugged my Xbox 360 controller in here, and it is now assigned to player 2 because it thinks that player 1 Xbox 360 controller is the keyboard that's plugged in. Now, a situation that can occur here, and that I actually encountered when I first tried to play GTA 5, is that if you press this button to switch analog control mode on or off, it's going to re-recognize the keyboard, and it occasionally re-recognizes the keyboard as player 2 or player 3, and if the game that you're playing can't immediately recognize different controllers plugged into the same system, then you're not going to have access to the controls on the keyboard. So case in point here, I plugged in the controller, it assigned it to controller 2, I turned the keyboard off and then back on, then I unplugged and replugged the controller, and now the controller is now player 1 once again. So I've loaded up GTA 5, and here's what happens if I turn on the analog aimpad mode with the controller already plugged in. Nothing. And from my understanding, the reason that's happening is because since I've reconnected to the computer, it's recognizing the keyboard as controller 2 or controller 3, and GTA 5 by default can't access those controllers, at least not with any of the means I've tried out. So just trying to fix this and work around it, I unplugged the controller, reconnected the keyboard, hoping that I would get controller 1 again, but that doesn't seem to have worked. I can still move around in non-analog mode. So I unplugged and replugged the keyboard in order to try to switch it back and get the analog controls working, because I just want to show that, because I was able to get them working, and now it's got, like, I'm walking forward without anything happening. All right, I think I'm going to need to restart the game here. So I restarted GTA 5, and fortunately my analog keys are now working once again. In GTA 5, if you're running around or on foot, there is no analog control. It's just you're going or you're not. It's in the car that you actually would want to have that control, and of course it started me up on top of some train tracks here with Trevor, so I have no cars readily available. Let me find one. So I'm actually kind of glad I chose GTA 5 because it is my best example of a game where I feel like I would actually make use of analog controls, but it's also a game that when I usually play it, I have a controller plugged in that I use. So if I'm on foot and I need to run around and aim at things, I use the keyboard and mouse so I can aim more accurately. And then when I'm in a car, I grab the controller so I can have the analog controls for steering, because that's what I'm much more used to and comfortable with. Now here, since I've jumped into the car, I try to go forward and back, and I actually can't, because forward and back are still just forward and back, and the controller controls are forward and back would use the triggers up here. So there's two ways to deal with that in the game. One is to go into the game's control functions and actually reassign them so that forward and back would still be the W and S keys. Or you can just use the macros over here, since M2 and M3 switch between those, and now I can do forward and back with analog control there since it's reassigned that. I was playing this for a little while yesterday, and I was actually training myself to hit M2 or M3 to switch back and forth between those modes when I was jumping into a car or out of it, but I think if I was playing this long term, I would just go into the game and reassign those buttons so I didn't have to switch between my two presets. What's wrong? What's wrong with this person? I must assist them. Oh, now I'm shooting. So see, I got out of the car and I immediately started shooting by pressing W because it switched it to the trigger button. What's wrong with this person? Yeah, just no one's helping this person. It's up to Trevor. Where'd my car go? Oh, it's right here. Taliana Martinez. I helped her out and now she can be a driver in my missions. Alright, I'm getting distracted by playing the actual game. I think the analog controls are helpful there, and it's definitely a lot easier to steer and move around while playing GTA 5, and I can definitely say it would allow me to get rid of the controller if that's what I was looking for. The best example I can show you of it actually in action is just the wheels as they turn. I slowly press down the A to turn left, and you can see the wheel turn a little bit or turn more. That's really all there is to it. I can get a little bit of action in between there as well. So to kind of sum things up here, I think the analog keys on this keyboard are functional and useful when you can get them working properly in the right environment. My plan was to play it with GTA 5, and just because that's one of the games that I play most often that I feel like I would actually use this in, but it does take away the experience if you are planning to do something like switch between a controller and the keyboard itself. You're really going to want to go with one or the other, and that's just because of some of the conflicts that are introduced by the Windows automatic recognition of something like an Xbox 360 controller, automatically assigning it to a position, and then the software syncing up with that so it will actually function in the game that you play and function seamlessly. But I think with a game like GTA 5, it would just take a little bit more setup work to get all the keys assigned properly so I could completely rely on the keyboard and take the controller out of the situation completely. Of course, there's a bunch of other games that would take advantage of this technology as well, so, you know, pick your poison, but keep in mind that if it's a game that you typically use a controller in, or if you want to have that flexibility of having a controller and the keyboard, you might be dealing with some restarts or some unplugging and replugging stuff in to get it to work right. I'm hoping that Cooler Master can maybe update the software to allow you to manually assign what is recognized as controller 1 or controller 2 when it comes to the analog controllers you have plugged in. Ultimately though, I think if you wanted the analog keys, the aimpad technology, but not to have the confusion of whether or not the keyboard is being recognized as a controller, maybe just hold out for the actual aimpad that Cooler Master is also developing, which will be separate and has an entire keypad full of analog controllable and assignable keys. But guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and let me know what you think of the Cooler Master MasterKeys 850 down in the comment section below. Do you think this keyboard's worth 200 bucks? Let me know, and I'll put a link to it when available in the description too. Thanks again for watching. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out, and we'll see you guys next time.